As we're talking about this rogue dictatorial wannabe president that's in the White House right now, is he has an issue with people that are smarter, stronger, faster, more intelligent, and speak much better than this guy does. And he's on a warpath against them. So you know what savage people that are too stupid to do anything for themselves do is they unleash war machines and military on cities of people that they just don't like.
Keep our names out of your mouth. If you are not willing to visit our communities and invest in our communities, keep our names out of your mouth. If you are not willing to dream with us and build with us. If you are not willing to understand that we are not deficits that have to be fixed, but assets that have to be unearthed. If you are not willing to understand the pride and the beauty of this city and this community, keep our name out of your mouth. Because if you were willing to visit, if you were willing to spend time, if you were willing to actually walk our communities and walk our streets and not just talk about us from the Oval Office, you would see what we see.
Maryland Governor Wes Moore speaking out against Donald Trump because Donald Trump is a trash human being and he's jealous of the person that Wes Moore is that Donald Trump never could be. That's why he's upset at Wes Moore, and that's why he's targeting Maryland, specifically Baltimore in Maryland, as the next city and state that he'd like to then go invade and occupy with his military, because that's what this dictator wants to do. So in response to that, Wes Moore is now speaking out more effectively and more directly at the wannabe dictator in the White House.
We know the president watches the program, and he likely saw the guest listing because he's tweeting about you or truthing, I guess. Is the reality here is you can't stop the president from sending troops to Baltimore if he wants to.
The year before I became the governor, in 2022, Baltimore was averaging almost a homicide a day. And I came in and I said, I refuse to be a governor who just offers thoughts and prayers to this situation. So we said we're actually going to work in partnership with Mayor Scott, work in partnership with local elected officials, work in partnership with local law enforcement. We made the largest investments in local law enforcement in our state's history, over $50 million going to Baltimore City alone. And also Maryland became one of the only states that actually helps to fund the U.S. attorney out of balance sheet, taking many of those gun crimes and actually turning them into federal charges. And the results have been incredibly encouraging. The homicide rate in Maryland is down over 20% since I have been the governor. And the last time the homicide rate was this low in Baltimore City, I was not born yet. And so the reason that I've asked the president to come and join us is because he seems to enjoy living in this blissful ignorance, these tropes and these 1980 scare tactics. Just last week, I was in Baltimore, and I was with a group called We Are Us, who's a violence intervention group. And they say, we're all we got, we're all we need. And that's exactly how people in this community feel. Because while the president is spending his time from the Oval Office making jabs and attacks at us, there are people actually on the ground doing the work who know what supports would actually work to continue to bring down crime, but it's falling on deaf ears of the president of the United States.
Donald Trump doesn't want to hear facts. He doesn't want to hear the things that Governor Moore is saying there, because Donald Trump doesn't have the capacity to understand these things. But all he understands is him talking about how these states and these cities are going to be unable to stop me from invading them and occupying them. That sounds like a terrorist to me. And last I checked, in this country, what we do with terrorists is we stop them, we fight them, and we don't accept them, and we definitely don't negotiate with them. But Wes Moore still had enough intelligence and wit about him to say, come down and walk the streets. If you want to be real about talking about crime, which we know that you're lying about, it's not like Wes Moore doesn't know that Donald Trump is a lying piece of trash. What he knows is that as soon as he invites him to come and see the reality on the ground, or what it is that he's making up all these lies about, what he'll know is that he'll be seen to be proven wrong to his face, and where the lies and propaganda going to go next. Now, he also more spoke about how crime has been decreased in that state overall since he's been in office, with reasonable things behind it, and that's investing in the people there. That's something white supremacists like Donald Trump don't want to accept, because that flies in the face of their belief systems that, anybody that's not a cis male white person is not worthy of any investment in our country. He's un-American. He's a white supremacist. Luckily, though, Wes Moore is too intelligent for that. And he went down more of the route of saying why even him unleashing these armed troops on the streets also doesn't make any sense.
Why, though, are you so opposed to this deployment?
Well, there's plenty of reasons. One, it is not sustainable. You cannot continue this type of pace of operations, particularly when it's costing over $1 million a day in order to do this. The second, it's not scalable. You're not going to be able to do this in every single major American city, particularly when many of the cities that have the highest crime rates are the places that have actually deployed their National Guards to Washington, D.C. So who's going to go do the work in their cities? The third, it's unconstitutional. It's a direct violation of the 10th Amendment. And if for a party that talks about state rights, it's amazing how they're having such a big government approach in the way they're conducting public safety. The fourth reason is because it's deeply disrespectful to the members of the National Guard. You know, as someone who actually deployed overseas and served my country in combat, to ask these men and women to do a job that they're not trained for is just deeply disrespectful. And so when we're thinking about all of these lasting factors, when we're thinking about the fact that it serves as a distraction from the fact that the president's disastrous economic policies are making everything more expensive for everyday Americans and making life harder for everyday Americans, there is a multitude of reasons that I am against this, and I will not authorize the Maryland National Guard to be utilized for this.
Every time someone that's actually an American, someone who served the country overseas, like someone who keeps talking about sending troops that he thinks he owns never did, he ignores those facts as he doesn't like this country. I'm wondering about all the people that were concerned about fraud, waste, and abuse and overspending of our funds and wasting our taxpayer dollars feel about the fact that this costs over $1 million a day, not overall in the 19 states that he'd like to unleash his army on, but in this one deployment that he'd like to then push on another city. As you've seen all those calm explanations with facts, details, and proof and results behind his policies, what you've seen is a madman in the White House losing his mind in the last few shreds of thinning hair on top of his head. This is what he then said in response. Governor Wes Moore of Maryland asked, in a rather nasty and provocative tone, that I walk the streets of Maryland with him. I assume he's talking about out-of-control, crime-ridden Baltimore. As president, I would much prefer that he clean up his crime disaster before I go there for a walk. Wes Moore's record on crime is a very bad one. He has no idea what he's talking about, unless he fudges his figures on crime like many of the other, quote, blue states are doing. But if Wes Moore needs help, like Gavin Newsom did in LA, I will send the troops, with quotes, which is being done in nearby DC, and quickly clean up the crime. After only 1 week, there is no crime and no murder in DC. When it is like that in Baltimore, I will probably walk the streets with the failing because of crime governor of Maryland. P.S. Baltimore is ranked 4th worst city in the nation in crime and murder. Stop talking and get to work, Wes. I'll then see you on the streets. Also, this is the best part. I gave Wes Moore a lot of money to fix his demolished bridge. I will now have to rethink that decision. The back end of that, when Donald Trump said that because apparently America is his. Our tax dollars are his. He decides where that money goes, not Congress. Does that not sound like a dictator? Or I'm sorry, a wannabe dictator, fascist? Because at some point we're going to have to go and admit that that's what this guy is. I mean, the last few people left that are still holding on to that bullshit lie that he's not. So he's going to think about pulling back that funding that he gave Wes Moore for some bridge that, if you read it in his words, Wes Moore ran out there and got to knocking the bridge down like he's the Hulk or something. But still, there's a little bit of reality behind what he's saying with that bridge that he might pull his money away from.
We're going to move heaven and earth to rebuild this bridge as rapidly as humanly possible. And we're going to do so with union labor and American steel. We will support Maryland and Baltimore every step of the way to help you rebuild and maintain all the business and commerce that's here now. As the governor can tell you, within hours of the Maryland request, we approved $60 million in emergency federal funding. I fully intend, as the governor knows, to have the federal government cover the cost of building this entire bridge, all of it. I call on Congress to authorize this effort as soon as possible.
Weird how that works, huh? Also, during that little report, there was Wes Moore, governor, the same guy that Donald Trump has been attacking, standing next to sleepy Joe Biden, who vowed, after allocating that money towards Maryland to rebuild that bridge, that somehow Donald Trump just told you he gave and is going to take it back. Kind of odd how that works. So anybody who, your friends or family who still believe that this guy is an utmost liar and everything that comes out of his mouth is one, ask them which part about that is true. And after they have to admit that all of it is a lie, then ask them, why would you believe anything else that he has to say? when we've got proof after proof after proof of his lies? Ask them why they still believe him about his tariffs. Ask why they still believe him about breaking up and ending these wars overseas. Ask them why they keep believing every time he says there's crime in all these cities that we're seeing these decreases in crimes, but he's just targeting them because it's people that he doesn't like. Ask them why they believe that too. Because nothing he says is true.